Hey, so I'm John with BBB Septic and Portable Toilets. Been a part of the company for almost 28 years now. Happy to be serving Northwest Arkansas.
Hi, I'm Letitia Washburn. I am a Bella Vista homeowner, and I'm also a realtor in Northwest Arkansas and have multiple clients who need your services. Well, I first met you because right after moving to Bella Vista, the septic alarm went off, and we had called someone else, a company that had lots of ads in the phone book. Thought that maybe that was the way to go, and it was not. It was a horrible experience. It was a frightening experience, and we ended up parting ways and kicking that company off of the property. Got in the phone book. Actually, I called the office and I said, hey, who's a good septic person? And you were recommended. I called you. You asked me 3 questions. The other company had never asked that question. I think you asked me if we had a plat map, because in Bella Vista, you need a plat map when you look at your design. You said, okay, I'll see you in the morning, have that stuff there, and I'll see you. You said, I think I know what's wrong. And we were like, what? He said, the good news is I know what's wrong. I can fix it I think you were in and out in 4 hours. But the bad news is I can't get here for a couple of days. And within a 4 to 6 hour period, it was fixed. We've never had another problem with it ever. And to make sure that I don't run into problems, I took out your plan. I joined the plan. And so every month I get things to put down the toilets and make sure everything's, percolating like it should. I guess that's a good word. And you're the only people I recommend. I do recommend others because I kind of have to, but you're the one I prefer and I refer over and over and over and over, and I've never had anybody complain. They're like, thank you. So thank you.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. Yeah, so what she's talking about is what we asked for was either the permit or the plat map or the as-built, and it's all in who you ask and where you ask the question. And today we can get those. Benton County and Washington County both have all those digitally on the website, so that you can go look at the parcel map that the county has, and you can actually download your permit and all the design and everything from there. And it was really sad because when we pulled up to your house, they had charged you quite a bit of money.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of gotten demanding about all of it, I think.
They demanded, they were there 3 days.
3 days?
They were there 3 days. Yeah.
Sorry.
Stop.
That was bad.
No, they came in and the actual plumber was on the phone. The other 2 people, and I'm going to hired hands basically, were there trying to figure it all out. And my husband had been in a lot of different industries, and pumps were one of them. So that was the first thing we checked when the alarm went off. Nope, the pump is working. And so the first thing they said was the pump is working. Okay, well, we knew that. So we're feeling okay. And then the next thing you know, they're calling their boss, they're scratching their head, they're digging things up, they're scratching their head. They went and bought a spider valve mechanism, and
They bought parts.
It looked like I put it together.
Yeah, I still have pictures of that.
Oh, do you? Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting. And so at the end of the second day, they said, must be the pump. It must be, because we can't figure it out. And so when I called the owner and said, hey, look, we had already checked that pump. The first thing you checked, you said it wasn't the pump. And he told me he did not have a crystal ball. He could not see in the ground and figure out what was wrong. They just had to keep digging.
Right.
They wanted to check the first night, and I blew them off. I did not pay them. The second night, he threatened me and said if he didn't get a check, they were going to camp out at my house, that he was a redneck with a redneck septic company, and he would run my business that I just started with my real estate. And we were scared. I mean, I was literally scared. So I wrote a check and sent them on their way. And I immediately got into Arvest and canceled the 2 checks. And they did call, and my husband said, because then you had come in to save the day. My husband, they called and said, "Are you going to take care of your bill?" And my husband said, "No, but if you have any questions, call." I can't remember the girl's name at the state level, but call her at the state health department, because they do have some questions as to why there wasn't a licensed plumber on the job, and why, what was the other thing he had us do? But anyway, and she said, "Thank you," and hung up, and we never heard another word. So it solved it. But I mean, what if I had been one of my clients that was a little old lady, and we have them, or a client who'd never been on a septic system, didn't know anything about it, and I've learned a lot, and I made it a point to learn a lot after that experience.
Sure.
And so I didn't want anybody else to ever have that horrible of an experience, and that frightening. I mean, still to this day, it's like, God, he still knows where I live. He still has my phone number. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a bit frightening.
But you know me too, and I got a bunch of big old boys. We can come out there and help you out.
That's right. And
Big
you
belly
did.
boys,
I mean,
by the way.
you took care of it.
Yeah.
You explained things, and not only that, then you were able to work with the state to say, "Hey, this is what happened. I'll send you pics."
Yeah, and we did. We took full pictures of it. What we ended up finding when we drove up out there, I thought it was odd that they had taken the components of your pump system and had taken them loose and had laid them in your backyard, and then had left.
Yes.
And when we showed up, all the components of our system were still laying outside on the ground, not hooked up.
Yeah.
But we were able to figure it out, and what they put in was not a hydro splitter or a spider valve. It was make-believe parts that they had glued together to make it look like that.
Oh, yeah. They had made numerous trips to Lowe's.
And the reason the pump wouldn't work is because the original installer had taken a shortcut, and it took us a little bit of time to figure that out, but we did. And then we took pictures of the mistakes the installer made and sent those to the health department as well. And that way, anytime we had somebody call with that problem with our company, the first thing we did was look up the permit and see who the installer was. If it was the same installer, then we knew what the problem was. So we looked like pretty smart people to other people that we ran into.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And still do to this day. Yeah. I mean, because, I can call you, I can talk to Rachel, I can talk to Mary. They can give me the lowdown. I think I had an interesting one the other day trying to figure it all out, and it just wasn't all meshing, but we were able to get some answers and provide the actual, there was another company, but provide them where the clean out was and things like that, because they weren't familiar.
Sure.
Being that I am a realtor in Northwest Arkansas, I live in Bella Vista, and I do a lot of work in Bella Vista. So people don't realize when they're moving here from other parts of the country or from within a city, we're a city too, but we're not full on sewer. We're pretty much full on septic.
Right.
And so in having this relationship with John early on, and it was somebody I could trust and somebody I could call, I knew every time I called I would get good information. So it was about 3 years ago, and I had a lady wanting to move into Bella Vista, and she didn't want anything big or fancy. She wanted a nice little home. And so we looked at a lot of the older homes that have the circle on the permit that indicates it's a metal tank. And so fast forward, that's prior to 78. So now here we are in 23, a long time, and metal rust. And so I kept trying to find where the septic was, and it wasn't there, because her whole backyard, the entire backyard, was a flower garden, and it was beautiful. And it was plants, but every time I asked the seller, they didn't have a plat map. I had the plat map, and I knew it was in the middle of all that. The problem was how was that going to make an effect on my client? So anyway, having that knowledge, calling and knowing to say, hey, this is a metal tank. When did you have it replaced? You can't have it pumped.
No.
So when did you have it replaced? We ended up walking away because they would not allow us to have pay for it ourselves to have you guys come out and mark it. Tell us where it's at, because as beautiful as those flowers were, they were going to end up in a tank at some point. And so the other realtor had no clue, and no offense to other realtors, but when you're selling in an area that's predominantly acreage, they all have septic. You have to know. You have to know your stuff. And so that's been the huge benefit of having a relationship with you guys to me, not only for my own self, but for the 135 plus clients that I've dealt with that either are building on land or they're living out in the country, and you say septic and they're like, what? Yeah, you've got tank, so it's just been a blessing to me, and it's been a blessing in my business. It's helped me because when you tell people things and you have that knowledge, they recognize that, and they want to work with the knowledgeable realtor. They want to work with the reputable company.
Right.
So
So our whole marketing strategy since I can remember, I've always kind of been responsible for our marketing as a company, has been knowledge and how do we become the experts in our market space, right? And so that's we champion that thought process. And so now today, fast forward, and you may not know this, so this may be new for you, but today, if you'd have had that same client, either our team, if there was a clean out, a little 4-inch round cap outside the house, if he had that, then our team could actually come out with electronic equipment, and we could have run a sensor out, and we could have found where the tank is and not disturbed any of the flowers. If there's not a clean out outside the house, then we work with a couple of different plumbing companies that have equipment similar to that, but they can actually go inside the house and either pull a toilet or go down through the vent pipes and do the same thing and electronically locate where the tank is without ever having to turn any dirt or dig anything or mess up any flowers. So, I mean, it's things like that. Thank God the technology has pushed us forward through time, but yeah, you might not have lost that deal had we had that technology or known how to use it at that time.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, this section is more about how we as realtors or how we as homeowners proceed forward with having a septic system. What do we do? So this section will be a little bit about what to ask. So the first thing you need to know if you have a septic system, whether it's Bella Vista or Huntsville or Hinesville or wherever, is you need to go to Benton County or Washington County and find your septic. And now our permit. I'm more familiar with Benton County, so you're going to go to the GIS map there, bentoncountyar.gov, and then GIS maps. It says interactive, and you'll put your parcel number in. You can put your address, but you also want your parcel number. That's been very important. So Bella Vista, it starts with 16-12345-000. I think in Rogers it's 15. It's different, but it'll be that same type of number. And look that up, and you can go environmental or you can go septic class, and it will bring it up. It will show you in your yard or on your property where the tank is and where the field lines lay out. And sometimes you can tell what type of tank. So those are the questions. Get that first. And then start asking your questions. How often do I need it pumped? A question when you're buying. When was it last pumped? What records do you have on it? How many bedrooms does it serve? And so you want to take over.
Yeah, I mean, those are great things, and I hope we can put a link that will have the web address and stuff with this video. But yeah, so those are all good things. And if you don't want to type all that in, you can send us an email or
me. Call me,
Letitia. But my team at my office at BBB, we can look that up for you. So if you don't want to look at the links and do that yourself, we can do that. Yeah, those things are all important, and it's important for you to know you don't have to be the professional and understand how to read it yourself. If you don't know what to look for, we do. And we can cover that for you. We can help you understand what you have, and we don't charge for doing that.
I get asked this a lot. How often should I have it pumped? And I know in Bella Vista and over the course of the years, there's been different types of, like I have a pump I never had a pumping conway. It just shot out of the house and into the tank.
Right.
There's also the diverters. So there's a lot of different kinds. So in general, if somebody says, I have mine pumped every other year or every year, is that good or bad? And
Well, I mean, so the analogy the word picture to go along with that would be, if you change the oil in your car every 1,000 miles, that's not going to hurt it.
right.
It's not really necessary. But on the contrast of that, you wouldn't drive a car 100,000 miles without changing the oil. Right? So your septic system is very similar. It doesn't hurt to pump it out more often, but we recommend every 3 to 5 years. So 3 is going to be if it's a rental property. If it's a rental property, depending on how many people live there, it might be every 2 years. If it's an Airbnb or something like that, where people are not paying attention to what they put down the drain, you might do it every 2 years. But if it's a young family that has a lot of users, might every 3 years. If it's teenage kids with mom and dad, every 5 years. 5 years is really the average of what's good. As you get on up into years, the kids move out, it's just you and your husband, maybe every 7 years. And if it's a widow lady that is just taking care of herself, maybe every 10 years. But the national average and what we see as the best is just that 3 to 5 year mark. And 5 years, and it ends up, that's why we made our maintenance program to be 5 years, because that's just the most average normal time that you would have that done.
And if you have his plan, they just call you and say it's time for us to come.
So we have a maintenance program. We're the only septic company in the world that I'm aware of, where we just have taken the cost of the bacteria that we send out every 6 months. It has each month you drop a little 1 ounce bag in your toilet and flush it. It's actually called Just Flush because that's all you do. So we figured up the amount of bacteria for 5 years and the amount of the pump out. We divided that by the 60 months, and it came up being like $12 a month, I think, something like that. I think it's gone up now. I think it's $14 a month because everything has gone up. But for that amount, and if you live on city sewer, you're going to be, $40, $50, $60 a month just for the sewer bill. So this is extremely cheap, $14 a month. We send you the bacteria either every 6 months or once a year, I think, that you put in. You administer once a month, and then once every 5 years, we show up and pump it out, and you don't owe us any more money. So it turns out to just be an out of sight, out of mind. We take care of it. You're doing good maintenance. It's almost like if you had your car set up for automatic oil changes, and it just drove itself to the shop and had the oil changed.
Oh, I like that analogy. Well, and the other thing too, it's not just pumping. Like we have a screen, and sometimes the little rocks and stuff that falls in there, and sometimes I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to clean it. So David will, but sometimes we forget, and it's like, oh, it's time. I just give you guys a call, and you come clean the screen out. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, your system
wonderful.
Has so in Bella Vista, the lots are pretty small, and when it was plotted, they only allowed for 1 lateral field. Now, anywhere else in the counties in Arkansas, you're required to have two available areas for a lateral field, the original area and the alternate area. Bella Vista doesn't have that. And if you're in a weird deal where you can't have equal length lines, now what they're doing is they spec out for a hydro splitter or a spider valve. What that does is allows us to send through different water pressures. We send a bigger amount to the longer lines and a smaller amount to the shorter lines. But those require a filter that you put in the outlet baffle so that you don't get any debris in the water that would plug up those orifices that regulate the pressure to the different zones. So that's what you have. A lot of people around in this area have those now. And so if you have one of those, you really need an outlet baffle filter, and they need to be cleaned out about once a year, depending on your family's habits. I've had people that it doesn't last 6 months, and other people can go a couple of years. But once you know a family's habits, just regular maintenance, just like taking care of a good car. You just take care of the maintenance on it.
Exactly. a couple of questions, and we're going to talk about licensing and who's doing the work, and then what happens after the work is done. Who's in charge of the cleanup?
Okay.
And so I recently had a situation. I'm trying to get a loan for a client, and they talked a lot about if it was a remodel type loan, you had to get a contractor with a license, and you had to be bonded and insurance. So I'm assuming that's the case for you guys.
Sure.
Okay. So
Yeah, so I mean, our team is fully licensed. In fact, we had two of the people that drive our septic tanker trucks actually just went and got their installers licenses. So, I mean, most of the people on my team that are all the lead technicians have their septic license. That's not required to pump one out.
right.
But when it comes into working on the systems and stuff, even though those tanker drivers aren't going to be actually working on the system,
Right.
they're still licensed and they still understand it. And so they're really able to help us. If something else needs to be done, we can send the right team out. In the state of Arkansas, we're allowed to work on anything from the foundation out. And that's a lot of times people don't understand, okay, we need to find our septic. And we say, well, you're going to have somebody pull a toilet. Well, that's why we don't do it, because that's a plumbing license, because that's inside the foundation of the house.
Makes
That's
sense.
inside the footprint of the house. So you have to have a Arkansas plumber's license to do that, and we don't have that. But what we do is the septic license. So everything from the foundation out is what we have. And you know, that is not the case with every company in our area, but it is the case with our company. So yeah.
Okay. And then once you come in, if we need you and you come in, then you've got the people that pump. And if they say, hey, you got something more going on out here, I think you better send somebody out.
Right.
But then, all right, so now we've come in, you've taken care of the job. Who does the cleanup? And what do you, what do my clients maybe need to know about that process?
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned that you had a client that was potentially going to own a house that had a flower garden over the whole backyard.
Right.
So, you know, we tell everybody we are not landscapers. You will be able to poop inside your house easily,
Right.
and consistently without fail, but we're not going to replant flowers when it's time, you know, after we've got done with the work.
Correct.
So, it really all depends on the scope of the work. A lot of times when we're just pumping one out, there's hardly any mess, or maybe if they have a riser out on top of the ground, there's zero mess.
Right.
So there's really nothing to worry about. If we have to dig and locate something, then you're going to have some scars in the yard, but you know, we put them back and we tamp them back down. And you know, unfortunately, if this is Arkansas, we call them Arkansas potatoes, but it's,
Right.
rocks are, we have
Lots.
a little bit of topsoil and a lot of rock.
Right.
You know.
Correct.
So
Especially in Bella Vista
Oh yeah,
too. Oh my
right.
gosh, yes.
Yeah. So you know, we come in and we'll level it back out and do the best we can. But through the rain and whatever else over the next month or two, you're going to have rocks that serve. It's just part of it. And you know, unfortunately, we're not landscapers.
Right.
You know, and that stuff takes a little bit of time.
To settle.
Yeah, for it to
Right.
settle. We call it the healing process. And you know, as long as you get somebody to come in, kind of rake those rocks out of the way and tend it a little bit. Usually the grass and the stuff will come back. Flowers takes a little more,
Right.
you know, but unfortunately that's, a lot of people don't pay attention to where things are located
Right.
when they decide they want to, you know, frou-frou their place up and decorate it. And you should really kind of, you know, understand. We had one lady in Bella Vista that had put a whole room addition on the back of her house. And then come to find, and the city approved it, but nobody ever looked up the as-built for where her system was, and her septic tank was directly underneath that room addition.
Oh, wow.
And it was metal, and it caved in, and we had to replace it. And so it was this whole debacle because nobody paid attention. They just added on to their house. So in those situations, it's much worse.
Right.
But you know, when we come in, we're like I said, we're not landscapers, but we'll come in and put it back as best we can and leave you with something that's manageable.
Right. And I remember that you brought the little tractor out and smoothed our rock out. Because that's what it was.
We had to do a lot of digging on yours
Yeah.
because of the kind of problem that we found. And so we had to basically follow the lines all the way down the hill into the entrance to each lateral line.
Right.
And it was quite the undertaking, but you know, we were able to push it all back and level it off and use the tracks on our machine to kind of roll it in, and I hope it healed properly. I haven't looked at it since
you know
then.
what? We have grass.
Oh.
We still have rock. We still have rock growing, but
Right.
there's grass, and
Well, that's
and we
gonna
took a
happen.
couple of trees out since then. So
Right.
yeah, it's all good.
Good.
But all of those have been great answers, and I think hopefully through this video, some people have heard some things that they weren't aware of, or
Yeah.
things that will help them to, you know, remember. Oh, I want to move to Bella Vista, but
Right.
you have what? Septic?
Yeah.
Where's your sewer? Well, you know, and you have to know. And now we're seeing a lot of people ask us in Bella Vista, I get asked this a lot, why are they clearing the entire lot?
Oh.
But that's why. Because the septic system requires more now.
Yeah.
And you don't have room for trees.
Well,
I mean, you do outskirts, but it's just easier for the whole lot to be cleared.
it can be. You have to be careful about clearing. And we've actually got a couple of builders in Bella Vista that got excited and cleared their land before they got their septic permits, and now those lots aren't usable because they took off too much of the topsoil, and it's called disturbed soil. And you have to have non-disturbed soil to be able to put a septic system in. Yeah.
That's sad because there's
Right.
a lot of money lost there.
Oh, yeah, it is. And I want to kind of revisit what you said about, you know, to be on our maintenance program, our trucks have to be able to drive up. We have to be able to take the 4 screws or the concrete lid off of the riser and just drop a hose in and pump the tank out. And so preferably, the only time you're ever going to have us doing any digging or any exploratory stuff is in the beginning when we don't know where stuff is.
Right.
Hopefully you'll allow us to come in, and we're very adamant about wanting to make sure that it's always going to be accessible. If you've got company over and you've got a clog and you don't have your tank accessible, it could be horrible. But if you've got company over and something's messing up, and David can go outside and take 4 screws off this green lid that's in the middle of the yard and look down and see where the clog is,
Right.
situation averted, right?
Right.
So the whole idea for us doing any digging is to get your system to where it's easily accessible. We can service it without ever having to tear any dirt up again. That's our goal.
Right.
So once we get to that point, then that's when you're basically qualified to be on our maintenance program, because I'm not going to go out and dig them up for free every time.
Right, exactly. One more question. The diverter line. So in my yard and many in Bella Vista, the question is, what are the white
Okay.
caps? And so I've had people who cut those off even with ground, and they had left me a tremendous detailed map for the next person. But then you got the people that cut them off about 5 owners ago. The map's lost. Nobody knows where they are. So then you come in. But I know you told me those are there so that if you have a problem, you can unscrew those and look to see
Right.
that they're clean and there's nothing in
Yeah.
there.
Those are technically called inspection ports. Now there's a
sense.
diverter valve or a bull run valve. So years ago in Bella Vista, if you had the unequal lines like what you have, they would have put a diversion valve in, and you would have turned it to setting 1, and that would have sent water to lines 1 and 2.
Right?
And it would have had to have overflowed to keep going to lines 3 and 4 and 5, right? And then when the time changes, because it's easy to remember twice a year, then you turn the diverter valve or the diversion valve or the bull run valve over to section 2. That will skip lines 1 and 2 and put it into line 3 and 4 and 5. And then you alternate back and forth, right? Yours has a hydro splitter, so it equally disperses through all the unequal lines all year long. The inspection ports that you're talking about, it cracks me up driving around, especially in Bella Vista, because you've got these inspection ports that are sitting 2 feet out of the ground throughout the yard.
Lovely green color,
Yeah.
blue-green with the big
And
white
people are
cap,
like,
yes.
I can't cut that off because it's part of my septic system. I'm like, no. The installer put those that tall so that they could put all the topsoil in after the construction was done. And so the landscaper wouldn't hit those inspection ports. But it was always meant that when you got done with the topsoil, that you would cut those off at the level and put the cap back down at yard level so you could mow over them. So every time I drive by one where they're 1 foot and 2 foot and 3 foot tall, I'm like, you got a $300,000 home with these wild green pipes sticking up in your backyard.
Right. And
That's
it's like
so
it's
cool.
either or. It's either they're real tall like that,
Yeah.
or they've cut them completely off and you have no clue where they are. And that you need to know.
The great thing is we don't have to have those if you have a problem. It helps.
Good.
It makes it cheaper for you to help us diagnose, because we can go look at individual lines. But if those get covered up for some reason, it's not the end of the world. We can still trace the lines. It's not nearly as easy, but we can still do it with our electronic stuff. But the better thing is to have them available. They can tell you when, we can look in those and tell you immediately if there's something wrong.
Right.
We've had some where the distribution box got, over time, it became unlevel, and all the water ended up going to the last line. So the top part of the field's not getting any water, and the last line's got mud down there because it's overflowing and everything's coming out that bottom line. And so by us being able to take the inspection ports off, we can tell, which leads us to the distribution box, and we can tell, and we have a method for leveling that back out and making the flow go even to each line. So yeah, it's good to have them, but you don't have to have them 2 and 3 feet above your yard to make them work.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
And if you don't
It's a
know
fashion statement, I guess.
that you need to call BBB Septic after all of this information, because I'm still learning. I've learned new things today, and I really thought I knew my stuff
Okay.
when it comes to septic. So,
Well,
I
thank
think
you for who
guys
you are.
awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate you, and I always appreciate your staff, and everybody's so lovely. And thank you for allowing me to come to this today. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. You're great.
It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Love you too, girl.